The crimson sandstorm battered against the reinforced windows of Research Station Gamma 12, creating an eerie symphony of howling winds and tiny particles scratching at the barrier between civilization and the harsh world outside. Mira Varan stood motionless at the observation deck, her slender fingers absently tracing the outline of a small, holographic pendant, the last memento of her daughter. The image flickered occasionally, as if fighting against time itself to preserve the memory of the 5-year-old girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile who had been taken from her 3 years ago in a shuttle accident. Colony X had never felt like home. Even after 18 months stationed here as the lead biosynthetic engineer, Mira found herself perpetually out of place among the stark utilitarian corridors and sterile research facilities. The colony, established on this harsh frontier planet in the 23rd century, represented humanity's relentless expansion into the galaxy, yet remained plagued by the same socio-political flaws that had haunted Earth for centuries. Surveillance sweep complete. Exterior conditions hazardous. Recommended protocol: maintain lockdown. Announced the station's AI in its characteristically flat tone. Mira sighed, deactivating the pendant. Another day confined to the station. Another day alone with her thoughts and memories. "Engineer Varan," called a voice from the comm system. "Your presence is requested for the scheduled desert survey. Despite the storm warning, Director Vare insists the expedition proceeds as planned." Mira checked her watch. A vintage piece from Earth that still kept perfect time. "Inform Director Vare that I'll be at the deployment bay in 20 minutes, she replied, already mentally preparing the list of biosensors and equipment she would need. The order seemed illogical, even dangerous. But Dr. Celine Vare, the ecological scientist who headed the research station, rarely tolerated questions about her directives. As station policy dictated, science waits for no one, not even nature's tantrums. The mobile medical unit hummed to life as Mira initiated the pre-flight sequence. These survey missions were routine: collect samples, monitor ecological changes, record data on the desert's evolving conditions. Yet, something about today's expedition felt different. A strange uneasiness had settled in her stomach since morning, an inexplicable sense of anticipation she couldn't shake. "You're being ridiculous," she muttered to herself as she guided the vehicle through the station's massive airlock and into the howling red storm. "Just nerves from being cooped up too long." The storm was worse than expected, reducing visibility to mere meters. Mira relied heavily on the vehicle's scanning systems to navigate the treacherous terrain. 3 hours into the survey, as she approached the edge of the designated zone, a faint anomaly appeared on her sensors, an unusual energy signature emanating from a cluster of rock formations ahead. Curiosity overrode caution. Mira adjusted her course toward the signal, the medical unit straining against the wind as she approached the mysterious reading. As she drew closer, the sandstorm abruptly subsided, as if nature itself was pulling back a curtain to reveal what lay hidden among the rocks. There, barely visible against the red landscape, was a small figure. Mira's heart pounded as she brought the vehicle to a halt and reached for her environment suit. Protocol dictated that she should report the finding immediately. But something, perhaps the memory of her lost daughter, pushed her forward without hesitation. The figure was a child, or at least childlike in proportion. As Mira approached, she could see it was clearly not human. The being had pale blue skin stretched over a delicate frame, with intricate markings along its arms and face that pulsed faintly with bioluminescence. It appeared unconscious, its shallow breathing barely perceptible. But what struck Mira most was not the alien appearance, but the unmistakable signs of suffering. The child bore wounds that spoke of violence, lacerations that leaked a silvery fluid, burns that had charred the blue skin to a dull gray. And on its chest, partially obscured by dirt, was a symbol Mira recognized from xenobiological archives, the cultural insignia of the Keith, an elusive species from a distant star system. Station regulations were explicit: non-interference with alien life forms, unless authorized by Central Command. The procedure would be to document, report, and await instructions, which typically meant observation until natural death or, in cases deemed potentially hazardous, immediate neutralization. Mira knew all this. She had memorized the protocols when she joined the Colonial Science Division. Yet, as she knelt beside the injured alien child, those regulations seemed suddenly hollow, cruel even. "Hey there," she whispered, though she doubted the child could understand her. "I'm going to help you." With gentle movements, Mira lifted the frail body. It weighed almost nothing in her arms, like holding a bird with hollow bones. The child's eyes fluttered open briefly, large, luminous orbs of deepest purple, before closing again. In that fleeting moment of connection, Mira felt something shift inside her, a protective instinct she thought had died with her daughter. Back in the medical unit, Mira placed the child on the examination table and began assessment procedures. The bioscanner revealed multiple fractures, severe dehydration, and signs of exposure to radiation consistent with outdated mining technology. Most concerning was a strange device partially embedded in the child's spine, a crude implant that appeared to be causing ongoing damage to the surrounding tissue. "What happened to you?" Mira murmured, carefully cleaning the wounds with antiseptic. "Who did this?" The station regulations flashed in her mind again. "Report all encounters with non-terrestrial entities immediately." Mira's hand hovered over the communication panel. Then, with deliberate resolve, she switched it off completely. The journey back to the station was tense. Mira had concealed the child beneath medical supplies in the storage compartment, a violation that could cost her career, or worse, considering the colony's strict biosecurity laws. Yet her determination never wavered. Something about this child, this survivor, had awakened the maternal instinct she had buried alongside her daughter's memory. Entering the station required careful timing. Mira waited until shift change, when the security systems underwent routine recalibration. With practiced efficiency, she maneuvered the medical unit into the maintenance bay rather than the main hangar, bypassing the standard decontamination procedures that would have detected the extra life form. Her private quarters, while modest, contained basic medical equipment she had requisitioned for personal research. It would have to suffice until she determined her next move. With gentle hands, she transferred the still unconscious child to her bed and resumed treatment of the wounds. Hours passed as Mira worked tirelessly, applying regenerative compounds to the burns, stabilizing fractures, and carefully removing foreign particles from the lacerations. The child remained unconscious, but stable, its breathing growing stronger with each passing hour. It was nearly dawn when a soft chirping sound broke the silence. The child's eyes had opened, those remarkable purple orbs now alert and focused intently on Mira. There was fear there, but also something else, a wary intelligence assessing the situation. "Hello," Mira said softly, keeping her distance to avoid frightening the child further. "You're safe now." The child made no sound but slowly raised a hand toward its throat, making a gesture Mira didn't recognize. "You can't speak?" Mira asked, mimicking the gesture. The child shook its head slightly, then winced at the movement. "It's okay. Don't strain yourself," Mira said. "Let's try something simpler. I'm Mira." She pointed to herself, repeating her name. Then, tentatively, she pointed at the child. The response was a series of musical clicks and soft whistles that human vocal cords could never reproduce. Mira nodded in acknowledgement, then reached for her tablet. She pulled up a simple drawing program and offered it to the child. "Can you show me?" she asked, making drawing motions. The child hesitated, then took the tablet with slender fingers. After a moment of exploration, It began to trace patterns on the screen. Not random doodles, but precise, meaningful symbols. One pattern appeared repeatedly, which Mira guessed might be the child's name in its native writing system. Lona. Mira attempted to pronounce the pattern, knowing she was probably butchering it. The child's eyes widened slightly, and it nodded. Lona, Mira repeated with more confidence. I'm going to call you Lumi. It means snow in an old Earth language. Is that okay? The newly named Lumi tilted her head curiously, then made a soft trilling sound that Mira chose to interpret as acceptance. A connection had been formed, fragile but real. As the first light of Colony X's distant sun began to filter through the shuttered windows, Mira realized that her life had irrevocably changed. She had broken countless regulations, risked her career, and potentially endangered the station. Yet, looking at the child who now trusted her enough to sleep peacefully, Mira couldn't bring herself to regret any of it. The next few days established a precarious routine. Mira attended her duties at the research facility, maintaining a facade of normalcy while constantly worrying about Lumi, who remained hidden in her quarters. She had reprogrammed her door's security protocols and installed rudimentary surveillance to alert her if anyone approached while she was away. Lumi proved to be an extraordinary patient. The child's recovery progressed at a remarkable rate, with wounds healing faster than Mira's medical knowledge suggested was possible. Even more surprising was Lumi's ability to understand concepts quickly. Within days, she had mastered basic sign language that Mira taught her from the station's educational database, allowing them to communicate beyond simple drawings. Where from? Mira signed one evening as they shared a meal of synthesized protein that she had modified to match Lumi's digestive capabilities. Lumi's response was hesitant. She signed far and stars, then drew a pattern in the air that Mira didn't recognize. How did you get here? Mira tried again. At this, Lumi's luminescent markings dimmed noticeably, a reaction Mira had come to associate with distress. The child shook her head emphatically and retreated to the corner of the room, wrapping slender arms around her knees. Mira didn't press further. Whatever had happened to Lumi, the memory was clearly traumatic. Instead, she redirected their interaction to more pleasant topics, showing Lumi images of Earth's oceans and forests, which seemed to fascinate the child. That night, Mira was awakened by soft, distressed sounds. Lumi was thrashing in her sleep, the markings on her skin pulsing erratically. As Mira approached to comfort her, the child mumbled words in her native tongue. One phrase repeated with increasing urgency, "Mama, Mama." Then, with a suddenness that startled Mira, Lumi sat upright, eyes wide with terror. Before Mira could react, the child had scrambled across the room and hidden herself in the storage compartment where Mira kept spare equipment. "Lumi, it's okay," Mira called softly, keeping her distance. "You're safe. It was just a dream." It took nearly an hour to coax Lumi out of hiding. When the child finally emerged, her eyes were fixed on the floor, markings dim with what Mira interpreted as shame or embarrassment. "Bad dreams happen to everyone," Mira signed, offering a gentle smile. "Even me." Lumi looked up, her expression questioning. "Yes, even me," Mira confirmed. After a moment's hesitation, she activated her holographic pendant, showing the image of her daughter. "I dream about her. She's gone now." Lumi studied the image intently, then reached out to touch the hologram, her fingers passing through the light. With deliberate movements, she signed, "Your child?" Mira nodded, swallowing against the familiar ache in her throat. "Yes, my daughter. Her name was Alara." Lumi was still for a long moment, then signed slowly, "Lumi child now." The question hit Mira with unexpected force. It was presumptuous, perhaps even dangerous to think in those terms. Yet, there was a rightness to it that she couldn't deny. "Yes," she signed back, her her hands trembling slightly. "If you want to be." Lumi's markings brightened to a luminous blue that Mira had never seen before. The child approached cautiously, then leaned against Mira in what could only be described as a hug. It was the first time Lumi had initiated physical contact. As they sat together in the quiet darkness, Mira realized she had crossed a line from which there was no return. She was no longer merely hiding an alien being. She was forming a family bond. The implications were enormous, potentially catastrophic. Yet in that moment, all she felt was a sense of purpose she had thought lost forever. The illusion of security was shattered 3 days later, when Mira returned from her shift to find her quarters in disarray. Someone had been there, searching through her belongings. Nothing appeared to be missing. And most importantly, Lumi was still safely hidden in the secret compartment Mira had constructed beneath the floor panels. But the violation was undeniable. "Engineer Varan," called a voice from her comm unit the moment she stepped inside. "Your presence is requested in Director Vare's office. Immediately." Mira's heart raced as she quickly checked on Lumi, signing that she needed to leave again but would return soon. The child seemed to sense her anxiety, the blue markings fading to a worried lavender. "Stay hidden," Mira emphasized. "No matter what happens, stay hidden." Dr. Celine Vare's office occupied the highest level of the research station, offering a panoramic view of the red desert beyond. The director herself stood with her back to the door as Mira entered, her tall frame silhouetted against the harsh landscape. "You've been conducting unauthorized research, Engineer Varan," Vayer said without turning around. "Using station resources for personal projects." Mira kept her expression neutral, though her pulse thundered in her ears. "Many of us pursue side projects during off hours. Director, it helps maintain mental acuity in our isolated posting." "Indeed." Vayer finally turned, fixing Mira with a penetrating stare. "But most side projects don't involve anomalous power fluctuations, missing medical supplies, or modified food synthesizer patterns." She picked up a tablet from her desk and slid it toward Mira. On the screen was a security report flagging unusual activity associated with Mira's credentials over the past week. "The system is designed to notice patterns, Engineer Varan, and your pattern has changed dramatically." Vayer leaned forward. "What are you hiding?" "Nothing that threatens station security," Mira replied carefully. "I assure you." "I'll be the judge of that," Vayer interrupted. "A full inspection of your quarters has been scheduled for tomorrow morning. If there's nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear." Mira felt ice form in her veins. An inspection would inevitably discover Lumi, and the consequences would be severe. Station protocol for unauthorized alien life forms was unambiguous: immediate containment, followed by either deportation or neutralization if the species was deemed potentially hazardous. "Director, with all due respect, my quarters are private space according to Colonial Regulation 542B, Mira argued, grasping at legal straws. "Any inspection requires either my consent or evidence of imminent danger." Vayer's expression hardened. "Are you refusing a direct order, Engineer?" "I'm requesting that proper procedures be followed," Mira countered, fighting to keep her voice steady. "If you have specific concerns, I'm happy to address them, but I won't waive my right to privacy without due cause." A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Vayer nodded curtly. "Very well. You have 24 hours to provide a full report on your personal research activities, including all resources used and results obtained. If that report satisfies my concerns, perhaps an inspection won't be necessary." It was a temporary reprieve at best, but Mira seized it. "Thank you, Director. You'll have the report by this time tomorrow." As she left the office, Mira's mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. She had 24 hours to either fabricate a convincing research project or find a way to safely relocate Lumi. Neither option seemed feasible. When she returned to her quarters, She found Lumi huddled in the hidden compartment, markings pulsing with anxiety. "Bad people?" the child signed as soon as Mira helped her out. "Not bad," Mira corrected, though she wasn't entirely convinced. "Just following rules. Rules that say you shouldn't be here." Lumi's expression fell, and she signed with trembling hands. "Lumi, go away?" "No," Mira said firmly, both signing and speaking aloud. "We stay together. I just need to figure out how—" That night, while Lumi slept, Mira accessed the station's secure archives, searching for information on the Keith species and any regulations that might offer protection rather than threat. What she found instead sent chills down her spine. There were classified reports of a mercenary camp operated by the United Mining Kingdoms, UMK, on the far side of the planet, a corporation known for exploiting genetic resources across multiple star systems. According to the fragmentary data, UMK had captured members of the Keith species for experimentation, attempting to weaponize their natural healing abilities and incorporate them into human genetic structures. The most recent report, dated just weeks ago, detailed a specimen escape during transport, a young Keith who had somehow broken free during a sandstorm. UMK had placed a substantial bounty for the capture of the research asset, with emphasis that it be returned alive and undamaged. Mira sat back, stunned by the implications. Lumi wasn't just an injured alien child. She was a fugitive from a powerful corporation that viewed her as property. The device embedded in her spine was likely a tracking implant that had malfunctioned in the escape. As if confirming her fears, a notification appeared on her screen. Unusual communications traffic detected at the edge of the station's monitoring range. Someone was scanning the area with focused intensity. They were hunting for Lumi. Mira closed the archives and erased all traces of her search. She needed help. Someone with technical skills beyond her own medical expertise. After careful consideration, she composed a message to Eric Tovian, the station's robotics engineer, and perhaps the only person she trusted enough to risk involving. "Need consultation on isolated power system. Personal project. Confidential. Your quarters, those 600? The response came almost immediately. Intrigued. "We'll bring tools. Coffee not optional." Mira allowed herself a small smile. Arik had always been friendly, if somewhat eccentric. He was known for bending rules in the name of innovation, and he held no particular love for station bureaucracy. If anyone would help without immediate judgment, it would be him. When Arik arrived the next morning, his initial reaction to Lumi was exactly what Mira had feared: shock, followed by instinctive retreat toward the door. "Before you say anything," Mira said quickly, blocking his path. "She's just a child. She's hurt, scared, and being hunted. I need your help to keep her safe." Arik's eyes darted between Mira and Lumi, who was watching him with obvious apprehension from behind Mira's workstation. "Do you have any idea how many regulations you're breaking?" he asked, his voice low. "This isn't just career-ending, Mira. This is potential criminal charges under colonial law." "I know," Mira acknowledged. "But look at her. Arik. Really look. They were experimenting on her, treating her like a lab specimen. I couldn't just leave her to die." Arik ran a hand through his disheveled hair, a nervous habit Mira had noticed during their previous collaborations. Then, with visible reluctance, he approached Lumi and crouched to her level. "Hello there," he said softly. "I'm Arik." To Mira's surprise, Lumi signed back, "Hello, Arik, friend." Arik glanced at Mira questioningly. "I've been teaching her sign language," Mira explained. "She learns incredibly fast." "Apparently," Arik muttered, then signed carefully. "Yes, friend." Lumi's markings brightened slightly, and she emerged from her hiding place, revealing the intricate patterns that covered her slender arms. Arik's scientific curiosity visibly overcame his caution. "Those markings, they're bioluminescent, self-regulating phosphorescent cells. if I had to guess. Fascinating adaptation. They seem linked to her emotional state, Mira added. Brighter when she's happy or excited, dimmer when she's afraid or sad. Arik nodded slowly, then turned to face Mira with renewed seriousness. This doesn't change the fact that you're in an impossible situation. Vare is relentless when it comes to protocol. If she finds Lumi— I know, Mira interrupted. That's why I need your help. Not just to hide her better, but to find a way out, for both of us. Arik's eyebrows rose. You're planning to leave the station? Where would you go? There's a border settlement beyond the Forgotten Oasis Valley, Mira said, pulling up a map on her tablet. It's outside colonial jurisdiction, technically independent territory. If we could reach it. That's at least 3 days' journey across open desert, Arik protested. And with UMK mercenaries searching the area, it's suicide. We can't stay here, Mira insisted. It's only a matter of time before they find her. And if what I discovered in the archives is accurate, they'll do worse than kill her. Arik was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving between Mira's determined face and Lumi's hopeful one. Finally, he sighed heavily. I must be insane, he muttered. All right, I'll help. But we do this smart, not desperate. First, we need to disable that implant in her spine. It's almost certainly a tracker. Then we need to prepare proper supplies and a route that avoids UMK patrols. Relief washed over Mira. Thank you, Arik. I didn't know who else to turn to. Save the gratitude until we're all safely across the border, he replied grimly. For now, let me examine that implant. Over the next several hours, Arik and Mira worked together to analyze the device embedded in Lumi's spine. It was indeed a tracker, but removing it completely would require surgical expertise beyond what they could manage in Mira's quarters. Instead, Arik devised a way to disrupt its signal without causing further damage to Lumi's tissue. This should buy us some time, he explained, as he attached a small device of his own design to Lumi's back. It creates a localized electromagnetic field that scrambles the tracker's output. But it's temporary. The power cell will last 3 days at most. While Arik worked on modifying a service vehicle for their escape, Mira prepared the report demanded by Director Vare. It was a masterpiece of technical obfuscation, page after page of legitimate research data, modified just enough to explain the resources she had been using without revealing their true purpose. She submitted it minutes before the deadline, knowing it wouldn't withstand serious scrutiny, but hoping it would delay any inspection long enough for them to implement their escape plan. That evening, as they finalized preparations, Lumi became unusually agitated. She paced Mira's small quarters, her markings fluctuating between anxious purple and alarmed red. What's wrong? Mira signed, concerned by the child's behavior. Lumi hesitated, then made a series of signs Mira hadn't taught her, complex patterns that seemed to describe movement and danger. I don't understand, Mira admitted, shaking her head. Frustrated, Lumi grabbed the tablet and drew rapidly. Crude but recognizable depictions of humanoid figures with weapons, approaching the station. Someone's coming, Mira guessed, her heart rate accelerating. Hunters? Lumi nodded vigorously, then pointed toward the outer wall of the station, in the direction of the maintenance bay, where Arik was preparing their vehicle. Mira didn't question how Lumi knew. The Keith species was still largely mysterious to human science, and she had already witnessed Lumi's extraordinary perceptiveness. If the child sensed danger, Mira was inclined to believe her. She activated her comm unit. Arik, we may have company. Lumi's agitated. I think UMK might be approaching the station. Already? Arik's voice came back, tense with surprise. We're not ready. The vehicle needs at least 4 more hours of modification to handle the desert crossing. We might not have 4 hours, Mira replied, already gathering essential supplies into a pack. Meet us at Access Corridor E7 in 15 minutes. We'll figure out the rest on the move. She turned to Lumi, signing quickly. Time to go. Stay close to me. The child nodded, her expression solemn beyond her years. She retrieved a small object from beneath the sleeping pad, a crude doll Mira had fashioned from spare fabric, the only possession Lumi could call her own. They moved through the station's corridors carefully, avoiding the main thoroughfares where they might be seen. Mira had timed their departure during the station's night cycle, when most personnel would be in their quarters. Still, every sound made her tense. Every shadow seemed to hide potential discovery. As they approached the rendezvous point, a station-wide alarm suddenly blared, red emergency lights pulsing along the corridors. "Attention all personnel," announced the station AI. "Security breach detected in Sector 12. Unknown vessels approaching without authorization. All non-security staff are ordered to remain in quarters until further notice." Mira's blood ran cold. Sector 12 was the maintenance bay, exactly where Eric had been preparing their escape vehicle. "Change of plan," she whispered to Lumi, redirecting their path toward an emergency exit. "We need to find another way out." They had nearly reached the exit when a figure stepped into their path. Backlit by the pulsing red emergency lights, Mira pushed Lumi behind her protectively, reaching for the medical injector she had repurposed as a weapon. "Engineer Varan," said Dr. Celine Vare, her voice unnervingly calm amid the chaos. "I believe you have some explaining to do." Before Mira could respond, the station shuddered violently, as if struck by some external force. The lights flickered, then stabilized. "We're under attack," Mira said urgently. "UMK mercenaries. They're after Lumi." Vare's gaze shifted to the small blue figure partially hidden behind Mira. "So that's what you've been hiding, a Keith child. Do you have any idea the danger you've brought to this station?" "The danger was already here," Mira countered. "UMK has been conducting illegal experiments on sentient beings, right under colonial jurisdiction. Lumi escaped them. They want her back." Another impact rocked the station, stronger than the first. In the momentary disruption, Arik appeared from a side corridor, breathless and disheveled. "They've breached the maintenance bay," he reported. "4 operatives, heavily armed. They're demanding we hand over the specimen, or they'll disable the station's life support." Vare's expression hardened. "And you're involved as well? Engineer Tovian? I should have known." "Director, please," Mira implored. "Whatever you think of what I've done, Lumi is an innocent child. We can't give her to UMK." The director was silent for a long moment, her calculating gaze moving between the 3 figures before her. Then, to Mira's surprise, she nodded curtly. "Follow me," she ordered. "Quickly!" Vare led them through a series of restricted corridors Mira had never accessed before, eventually arriving at a small hangar containing a sleek vehicle, unlike the standard colony transports. "Director's emergency evacuation craft," Vare explained, activating the vehicle's systems with her security clearance. "Faster than anything UMK is likely to have brought, and equipped with advanced cloaking technology." "You're helping us escape?" Arik asked, clearly stunned. "I'm protecting my station and personnel," Vare corrected firmly. "By removing the target of this attack, once you're clear of Colony X jurisdiction, you're on your own." As the vehicle powered up, Vare turned to face Mira directly. "I don't condone your methods. Engineer Varan, you violated numerous regulations and endangered this entire facility, but—" Her gaze softened slightly as it fell on Lumi. "I understand your motivation." The station's security alert intensified, indicating the intruders were approaching their location. "Go," Vare urged, opening the hangar's exterior doors. "The storm will provide additional cover. Head for the Forgotten Oasis border crossing. I'll delay pursuit as long as possible." Mira hesitated, then impulsively embraced the stern director. "Thank you, Dr. Vare." "Don't thank me yet," Vare replied, already stepping back. "You still have to cross the desert alive." Moments later, they were speeding across the red sands. the research station rapidly shrinking behind them. The storm Vare had mentioned was building on the horizon, a massive wall of swirling crimson that would soon envelop them. "That storm looks worse than the usual dust devils," Arik observed from the pilot's seat, his expression grim. "The vehicle's shielding should hold, but navigation will be nearly impossible once we're inside it." Mira nodded, securing Lumi in the passenger compartment. The child appeared unusually calm despite their harrowing escape, her markings glowing a steady, determined blue. "We'll navigate by the old survey markers," Mira decided. "They're hardened against storms, designed to transmit through interference." "And if UMK is tracking those same markers?" Arik challenged. "Then we'll have to be faster and smarter," Mira replied simply. There was no perfect solution, only forward movement. As they plunged into the roaring sandstorm, visibility dropped to zero. The vehicle's exterior cameras became useless, obscured by the dense cloud of particles surrounding them. Arik switched to instrument navigation, following the faint signal of the survey markers, while the craft shuddered against the storm's fury. In the passenger compartment, Lumi pressed her small hand against the window, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in rhythm with the storm's howling gusts. There was a strange synchronicity to it, as if she were somehow connected to the planet's raw elemental power. "She's never seen a storm like this before," Mira observed. "At least, not from inside a vehicle." "Let's hope she doesn't develop a taste for extreme weather," Arik muttered, fighting the controls as another violent gust threatened to push them off course. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by Arik's occasional updates on their position and the storm's intensity. Mira used the time to tend to Lumi, checking the signal jamming device on her spine and ensuring she remained hydrated. The Keith physiology required more frequent water intake than humans, something Mira had discovered through careful observation. As the first light of dawn began to penetrate the thinning storm, Arik suddenly tensed, his attention fixed on the navigation display. "We've got company," he announced grimly. "2 vehicles approaching from the northeast, moving fast." Mira leaned forward to study the display. "UMK? Who else would be crazy enough to fly through that storm?" Arik confirmed. "They're gaining on us. This vehicle may be advanced, but it wasn't designed for a chase across open desert." Mira's mind raced through their options, none of them promising. They couldn't outrun the pursuers, and their weapon systems were minimal, designed for clearing debris, not combat. "The canyon system," she decided suddenly. "About 40 kilometers ahead. The passages are too narrow for their larger vehicles. And possibly too narrow for ours," Arik pointed out. "Plus, the electromagnetic properties of the rock formations will disrupt our navigation systems." "We'll have to pilot manually," Mira acknowledged. "But it's our best chance." Arik nodded grimly and adjusted their course. The canyon system loomed ahead, a labyrinthine network of narrow passages carved through ancient red rock, notorious among colonial surveyors for its treacherous conditions and disorienting similarities. As they approached the canyon entrance, the pursuing vehicles closed the distance rapidly. A warning light flashed on the control panel as energy readings spiked behind them. "They're charging weapons!" Arik shouted, executing a sharp evasive maneuver that sent them all lurching against their restraints. A blast of energy scorched the air where they had been moments before, superheating the sand into glass. A second shot clipped their rear stabilizer, sending the vehicle into a dangerous spin that Arik barely managed to correct. "Hang on!" he called as they plunged into the canyon, the sheer rock walls suddenly rising around them like closing jaws. The passage narrowed immediately, forcing Arik to slow their speed and navigate with exacting precision. Behind them, one of the pursuing vehicles attempted to follow, but miscalculated the clearance. The sickening sound of tearing metal echoed through the canyon as it scraped against the rock wall, losing control and crashing in a spectacular explosion that temporarily illuminated the shadowy passage. "One down," Arik said with grim satisfaction. "But the other one's still back there, and they're being more cautious now. The canyon twisted and branched before them, offering multiple possible routes. Without functioning navigation, they were effectively flying blind, relying on Auric's instincts and Mira's fragmentary memory of survey maps she had studied. Left here, Mira directed at a fork in the passage. The right branch narrows to impassable after about 2 kilometers. Auric followed her guidance, the vehicle scraping uncomfortably against the canyon wall as they made the tight turn. The pursuing craft was momentarily lost from their sensors as the winding passage blocked direct line of sight. For nearly an hour, they navigated the treacherous canyon system, taking every opportunity to lose their pursuer in the maze-like environment. Occasionally, distant energy readings would indicate the UMK vehicle was still searching for them. But the distance remained variable. "I think we're actually going to make it," Auric said cautiously, as they emerged into a slightly wider passage that showed signs of eventually opening to the desert floor again. That's when everything went wrong. A massive energy signature suddenly appeared directly ahead. A third UMK vehicle that had apparently anticipated their route and positioned itself to intercept. Simultaneously, the pursuer behind them reappeared on sensors, closing rapidly. "They've boxed us in," Mira realized with sinking dread. Auric frantically searched the canyon walls around them. "There!" He pointed to a narrow side passage barely visible in the shadows. "It's tight, but it might be our only option." He wrenched the controls, directing their vehicle toward the opening. The passage was indeed narrow, alarmingly so. Metal shrieked against stone as they forced their way into the constricted space, the vehicle's exterior plating being stripped away with each meter of progress. "The engines can't take this kind of strain," Auric warned, as warning lights cascaded across the control panel. "We're going to lose power soon." Ahead, the passage appeared to widen slightly, offering a small chamber where they might at least have room to maneuver. With a final surge of power, Auric pushed the vehicle into the space, the engines immediately failing as they cleared the constriction. They sat in tense silence, the dead vehicle tilted at an uncomfortable angle against the chamber wall. Outside, the sounds of the pursuing craft echoed through the canyon, growing closer, then fading, then returning as they searched methodically for their quarry. "They know we're in here somewhere," Mira whispered, though there was no way the UMK operatives could hear them through the vehicle's hull. "It's just a matter of time before they find this passage." Lumi, who had remained remarkably calm throughout the chase, suddenly became agitated. Her markings pulsed with urgent crimson light as she tugged at Mira's sleeve, pointing deeper into the chamber where shadows gathered most densely. "What is it?" Mira signed, following the child's gaze. Lumi slipped from her seat and moved toward the rear of the vehicle, indicating they should follow. After exchanging puzzled glances, Mira and Eric complied, gathering essential supplies in case they needed to abandon the craft. The chamber's darkness was nearly complete once they left the vehicle's emergency lighting behind. Mira activated a small, portable lamp, revealing rough stone walls that showed signs of ancient water flow, smooth curves and hollows carved by long vanished rivers. Lumi moved with surprising confidence through the darkness, following a path only she seemed able to perceive. After several minutes of careful progress, the passage opened into a larger space where the stone had been deliberately carved, regular shapes and patterns too precise to be natural. "This is a Keith sanctuary," Mira realized, recognizing symbols similar to those marked on Lumi's skin. They must have established outposts on this planet long before human colonization. Lumi confirmed this with an emphatic nod, her markings now glowing with a bright, steady blue that illuminated the chamber with soft light. She approached one particular carving on the wall, an intricate spiral pattern surrounding a central, handprint-shaped depression. Without hesitation, she placed her small blue hand against the carving. The effect was immediate and astonishing. Lines of blue-white light spread from Lumi's hand, flowing along channels carved into the stone that had been invisible moments before. The entire chamber came alive with luminescence, revealing its true size, much larger than they had initially perceived, and complex architecture. More importantly, a doorway appeared where solid rock had seemed to be, leading deeper into the mountain. Incredible, Arik breathed, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding their dire situation. Some kind of bioluminescent reaction keyed to Keith physiology. A perfect security system, undetectable unless activated by the right biological signature. And a potential escape route, Mira added practically. Lumi, does this lead outside, to the desert? The child nodded, tugging Mira's hand toward the newly revealed passage. What about the vehicle? Arik asked. If we leave it, UMK will know we escaped on foot. Let them waste time searching the canyon while we get a head start, Mira decided. We don't have much choice. They gathered what supplies they could carry and followed Lumi into the passage. Unlike the rough canyon, this tunnel was smoothly carved, with the same luminescent channels running along its length, activated by Lumi's presence. The air grew noticeably cooler as they descended, suggesting they were moving deep into the mountain's heart. After what seemed like hours of walking, though Mira's chronometer indicated less than 40 minutes had passed, the passage began to slope upward again. Finally, they emerged into a small chamber with another carved handprint symbol on the far wall. Lumi activated this one, as she had the first, revealing a final passage that led to a cleverly concealed exit. As they stepped outside, Mira was momentarily disoriented. They had emerged on the opposite side of the mountain range, with the vast expanse of the forgotten Oasis Valley spread before them. She led us through the entire mountain, Arik marveled. We covered at least 15 kilometers underground. Mira checked her positioning device, relieved to find it functioning again outside the canyon's interference. And we're now less than a day's journey from the border crossing. Lumi saved us hours of travel, and possibly our lives. The child beamed at the praise, her markings glowing with bright satisfaction. But the glow dimmed quickly as she turned to look across the valley, her expression becoming serious once more. Not safe yet, she signed, gesturing toward the horizon. Mira followed her gaze and felt her heart sink. In the distance, dust clouds indicated vehicles moving across the desert floor, too many to be ordinary colonial patrols. UMK had apparently called in reinforcements. They really want her back, Arik observed grimly. Whatever she knows or whatever they can extract from her biology must be incredibly valuable. Or they're desperate to cover up what they've been doing, Mira suggested. Either way, we need to move. The border settlement is our only hope now. They set off across the valley floor, keeping to the shadows of scattered rock formations whenever possible. The desert heat was intense, especially for Lumi, whose species evolved in a cooler environment. Mira fashioned a protective covering from their limited supplies, monitoring the child's condition carefully. By midday, they had covered significant ground, but Mira was becoming increasingly concerned about their water supply. They had enough for perhaps another 8 hours, if carefully rationed, but the border was still at least 12 hours away on foot. We could try to find another Keith sanctuary, Arik suggested, as they rested in the shadow of a massive boulder. They might have established water caches. Without Lumi's ability to sense them, we'd be searching blindly, Mira pointed out, and we don't have time to wander. Lumi, who had been unusually quiet during their trek, suddenly perked up. She pointed to a distant shimmer on the horizon, signing excitedly. Water. Life. Mira squinted in the direction indicated. I don't see anything but heat mirages. The Keith are known to have enhanced perception, Arik reminded her. If she senses water, I'm inclined to trust her. With renewed hope, they adjusted their course toward where Lumi had pointed. After another hour of difficult travel, a genuine oasis came into view, a small cluster of vegetation surrounding a natural spring that bubbled up from deep underground. "You were right," Mira signed to Lumi, who responded with a modest blue pulse of her markings. The oasis provided not only water, but also temporary shelter among the dense vegetation. As Arik refilled their containers, and Lumi explored the unfamiliar plant life with careful curiosity, Mira took the opportunity to check the signal jamming device on the child's spine. "How's it holding up?" Arik asked, noticing her concerned expression. "Power levels are at 30%, Mira reported. "It might last another 16 hours if we're lucky." "And if it fails before we reach the border?" Mira didn't answer immediately. They both knew what would happen. UMK would immediately detect Lumi's tracker and converge on their location. "Then we run faster," she said finally, forcing confidence into her voice. "Or we find somewhere to make a stand." As evening approached, they prepared to continue their journey. Traveling at night would be cooler and offer better concealment, though navigation would be more challenging. Arik had just finished packing their replenished supplies when Lumi suddenly froze, her markings flashing urgent warning patterns. Before either adult could react, a searing energy beam cut through the oasis vegetation, missing Arik by centimeters and setting several plants ablaze. "Down!" Mira shouted, pulling Lumi behind the natural barrier of the spring's stone basin. A figure emerged from the desert haze, humanoid but clearly augmented with mechanical components. Its right arm had been replaced by an energy weapon, and its eyes glowed with unnatural purple light, similar to Lumi's, but corrupted somehow. Malevolent. "A bounty hunter," Arik whispered, reaching for the small defense weapon they had salvaged from the vehicle. UMK must have put out contracts to independent operators, as well as using their own forces. The hunter spoke, its voice an unsettling blend of organic and synthetic tones. "Surrender the Keith specimen, and you may leave with your lives. Resist, and you will be terminated. UMK authorizes lethal force to recover its property." "She's not property," Mira called back, anger overriding caution. "She's a child with rights under colonial law." The hunter laughed, a hollow, mechanical sound. "Colonial law has no jurisdiction over UMK operations. Last warning, surrender the specimen." Instead of responding, Arik fired their weapon. The energy pulse struck the hunter square in the chest, but seemed to dissipate across some kind of shield with minimal effect. "Disappointing," the hunter remarked, raising its weapon arm. What happened next occurred so quickly that Mira could barely process it. Lumi darted from behind their cover, moving with startling speed toward the hunter. Her markings blazed with intense blue light, nearly blinding in its brilliance. The hunter fired, but the beam veered off course, as if deflected by some invisible force surrounding the child. When Lumi reached the hunter, she placed her small hand against its mechanical arm. There was a surge of energy, the same blue-white luminescence they had seen in the Keith sanctuary, and the hunter's weapon systems abruptly failed, the purple glow in its eyes flickering and dying. The bounty hunter staggered backward, clearly disoriented. "What? What did you do to me?" it demanded, voice distorted by static. Lumi didn't respond. She was already running back to Mira and Arik, her markings dim to near invisibility from the enormous energy expenditure. "Go!" she signed urgently. "Not last. More coming." Mira scooped Lumi into her arms and ran, Arik close behind. They abandoned the oasis, heading directly toward the border settlement, now visible as a distant collection of lights against the darkening sky. "How did she do that?" Arik asked as they ran, his voice tight with exertion and awe. "I don't know," Mira admitted. "But she's exhausted now. We need to protect her until she recovers." The journey across the remaining desert was a blur of determination and fear. Lumi remained unnaturally still in Mira's arms, her markings barely visible, like dying embers. They stopped only when absolutely necessary, pushing their bodies to the limit. As dawn broke on the third day since their escape from the station, they finally approached the border crossing, a fortified checkpoint separating colonial territory from the independent settlement beyond. They had made it further than Mira had dared hope. But the final obstacle might prove the most challenging. Colonial border security was notoriously strict, and they had no legitimate travel authorization. If they were denied passage, UMK forces would catch up within hours. We need a distraction, Arik decided, as they observed the checkpoint from a concealed position. Something to draw attention away from the main gate while we slip through. Before they could formulate a plan, the decision was made for them. Multiple vehicles appeared on the horizon behind them, UMK forces closing in rapidly, simultaneously. An alarm sounded at the checkpoint, suggesting their approach had already been detected. They're coordinating with border security, Mira realized with sinking dread. UMK must have contacts inside the colonial administration. Then we make a run for it, Arik said grimly. Right through the front gate. It's our only chance. With Lumi still cradled in her arms, Mira sprinted toward the checkpoint, Arik providing covering fire with their small weapon. Border security personnel emerged from the gatehouse, weapons raised. Halt and identify yourselves, one officer commanded. We seek asylum, Mira shouted back. This child is being hunted by UMK for illegal experimentation. We invoke Article 7 of the Colonial Charter, protection of endangered sentient species. The mention of Article 7 caused visible hesitation among the officers. It was a rarely invoked but powerful legal protection, established after previous corporate abuses of non-human species. Unfortunately, UMK forces didn't share such hesitation. Energy weapons fired from the approaching vehicles, striking the checkpoint perimeter with devastating force. One blast caught Arik in the shoulder, sending him sprawling to the ground with a cry of pain. Arik! Mira turned back, unwilling to abandon her friend. Keep going, he insisted through gritted teeth. Get Lumi across the border. A border security officer made the decision for them, rushing forward to drag Arik to safety while shouting into his communication device. We have civilians under fire. All personnel to defensive positions. The checkpoint erupted into chaos as colonial forces engaged the UMK attackers. Amid the confusion, Mira slipped through the gate with Lumi, crossing the invisible line that marked independent territory. She had barely made it 20 meters beyond the border when a figure stepped into her path, tall, imposing, with the unmistakable insignia of UMK Command on its uniform. Unlike the bounty hunter, this was fully human, but somehow more terrifying in its cold calculation. Engineer Varan, the UMK commander, addressed her by name, confirming Mira's fears that they had accessed station records. You've led us on quite a chase, but it ends here. The specimen belongs to UMK. Her name is Lumi, Mira replied, backing away slowly. And she belongs to herself. The commander smiled without warmth. Such quaint ethical positions have no place in corporate research. The Keith physiology represents billions in potential bioweapon patents. One specimen is a small price for such advancement. You're in independent territory now, Mira pointed out. Colonial border forces won't let you take her. Border forces are currently occupied, the commander observed casually. And independent territory simply means I don't need colonial authorization for this. He raised a weapon, not an energy blaster, but something more sinister. Mira recognized it as a neural disruptor, designed to incapacitate without killing. Perfect for capturing specimens alive. In that moment, Lumi stirred in Mira's arms. Her markings began to glow once more, weak at first, then with increasing intensity. The child opened her eyes, those remarkable purple orbs now blazing with inner light, and fixed her gaze on the UMK commander. You will not take her, Mira stated with absolute conviction, feeling Lumi's strength flowing into her own body where they touched. Not now. Not ever. The commander fired the neural disruptor. The energy pulse shot toward them, but instead of striking its intended targets, it seemed to bend around them, redirected by an invisible field of force. The commander fired again, with the same result. Lumi slipped from Mira's arms, standing on her own with surprising steadiness. The ground beneath her small feet began to glow with the same blue-white energy they had seen in the Keith sanctuary, spreading outward in concentric circles. The commander's expression shifted from confidence to uncertainty, then to the beginning of fear. "What is this? The specimen was never capable of—" He never finished the sentence. A pulse of energy emanated from Lumi, knocking the commander backward several meters. He lay stunned but conscious, his weapon fallen from nerveless fingers. In the distance, the battle at the checkpoint was intensifying. Colonial forces, though outnumbered, were holding their position, preventing UMK from crossing the border. Arik was nowhere to be seen, hopefully safely inside the checkpoint's medical facility. The commander struggled to his feet, reaching for a communication device. "All units, converge on my position. Maximum force authorized." Mira looked down at Lumi, whose strength was clearly fading again after the energy expenditure. The child met her gaze with calm determination, then signed a simple message. Together. Understanding flowed between them without need for further words. Mira nodded, then picked up the fallen neural disruptor. She had never used such a weapon before, but the controls were intuitive enough. She adjusted the settings to maximum and aimed it at the commander. "Call them off," she demanded, "or I use your own technology against you." The commander laughed dismissively. "You don't have the training to—" Mira fired. The disruptor pulse struck with perfect accuracy, sending the commander collapsing to the ground, his nervous system temporarily paralyzed. "I'm a quick study," she told his immobile form, then turned to Lumi. "Let's find shelter before his reinforcements arrive." They hadn't gone far when the sound of approaching vehicles reached them, not from the direction of the checkpoint, but from deeper, within independent territory. Mira readied the disruptor, prepared to make a final stand if necessary. Instead, the vehicles that appeared bore the markings of the settlement's own security force, a mercenary group with no love for either colonial administration or corporate interests like UMK. A tall woman with intricate facial tattoos, marking her as the settlement's security chief, stepped from the lead vehicle. She surveyed the scene with experienced eyes, the paralyzed UMK commander, the battle at the checkpoint, and finally, Mira and Lumi standing together, defiant despite their exhaustion. "Interesting situation you've brought to our doorstep," the chief observed dryly. "Care to explain why UMK is willing to risk colonial confrontation over one woman and a blue child?" Mira took a deep breath. "Her name is Lumi. She's Keith, a species UMK has been experimenting on illegally. They want her back because she can expose their operations, and because her biology is valuable to them." The security chief nodded thoughtfully. "The Keith are known to us. They were traders with our settlement generations ago, before they became scarce." She crouched to Lumi's level, examining the child's markings with genuine interest. "We wondered what had become of them." Lumi regarded the chief cautiously, her markings shifting through cautious purples and curious blues. "We seek asylum," Mira stated formally. "For both of us. I've become her guardian." The chief rose to her full height again. "Asylum is granted, under settlement law. UMK has no authority here." She gestured to her personnel. "Secure the perimeter. No UMK operative crosses our border today." Relief flooded through Mira so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. They were safe, at least for now. The settlement's medical facility was nothing like the advanced research station, but it was clean and well-equipped. Arik had indeed been brought there after the border guards retreated, his shoulder injury serious, but not life-threatening. He grinned weakly when Mira and Lumi entered his room. "You made it," he said, genuine relief in his voice. "I wasn't sure if you'd get past that UMK commander." "Lumi handled him," Mira replied, squeezing the child's hand gently. "She's full of surprises." Over the next few days, as they recovered from their ordeal, the settlement's security forces maintained a vigilant watch at the border. UMK eventually withdrew their forces, unwilling to risk further confrontation with both colonial administration and independent mercenaries. The corporation issued a statement denying any illegal experimentation and claiming they had merely been attempting to recover stolen research materials. Dr. Selena Vare, somewhat surprisingly, arrived at the settlement a week later, having secured special diplomatic passage. Her first action was to formally reprimand Mira for violating numerous station protocols and endangering colonial personnel. Her second action was to present official documentation recognizing Lumi as a sentient being entitled to protection under Article 7, with Mira listed as her legal guardian. "I may not approve of your methods," Vare told Mira privately, "but I cannot deny the results. What UMK was doing violated everything the colonial charter stands for. Their operations have been suspended, pending full investigation." "Thank you," Mira said sincerely. "I never meant to put the station at risk." "I know," Vare acknowledged with the barest hint of a smile. "Your file always indicated a tendency to prioritize ethical considerations over regulations. It's why I selected you for the Xenobiology Division in the first place." As Vare prepared to return to the station, she paused. "There's a position available at our secondary research facility. Less prestigious than your previous role, but it includes family housing and access to educational resources suitable for unusual children." Mira glanced at Lumi, who was teaching Eric an intricate Keith hand game nearby, her markings glowing with happy blue light. "I'll consider it," she promised. "Once things settle down here." That evening, as desert twilight painted the settlement in shades of purple and gold, Mira and Lumi sat together on the roof of their temporary quarters, watching the stars emerge one by one. "Those are your stars," Mira signed, pointing to a distant constellation. "The Keith homeworld is there, though it's too far to see without a telescope." Lumi nodded, her expression thoughtful. After a moment, she signed carefully. "Home there once, home here now." "Yes," Mira agreed, feeling unexpected tears prick her eyes. "Home is here now, together." Lumi hesitated, then signed a question that caught Mira completely by surprise. "Can I stay with you too? Always?" The simple question contained worlds of meaning. A child asking for permanence, for family, for belonging. Mira recognized the echo of her own loneliness in Lumi's question. The same yearning for connection that had driven her to risk everything for this remarkable blue child. "Yes," Mira signed back, her hand steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. "Always. We stay together." Lumi's markings blazed with joy, illuminating the rooftop with brilliant blue light. She wrapped her slender arms around Mira in a fierce hug, and for the first time since Mira had found her in the desert, the child spoke aloud, a single word in a musical, chirping voice. "Mama." In that moment, under the vast desert sky, two souls from different worlds found what they had both been searching for. A family forged not by blood or species, but by choice and love. The path ahead would not be easy. UMK would not abandon their pursuit entirely. And integrating a Keith child into even the independent settlement would present countless challenges. But as Lumi's markings pulsed in harmony with Mira's heartbeat, those challenges seemed surmountable. They had crossed a desert, outrun mercenaries, and defied a corporation. They had found each other against impossible odds. Together, they had found home. As if responding to this revelation, a small blue butterfly, an Earth species adapted to the desert conditions, fluttered past them, landing briefly on Lumi's outstretched finger before continuing its journey into the gathering night. Both Mira and Lumi watched it go, recognizing the symbol of transformation and hope in its delicate wings. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, under the stars of a world that belonged to neither of them, yet somehow to both, they were exactly where they needed to be. Together, Lumi signed again, her markings softly glowing. Together, Mira agreed. Always.